systems are everything.
Yeah.
So here's a basic weekly marketing system, which any B2B business owner can use. And it's the exact system that I use. And it's based on a small number of things you do once a week. So number one,
Paul Green grew his company, MSP Marketing Edge, by creating marketing systems that keep his business in front of thousands of prospects every week. In this podcast, he shares the building blocks of these systems and many other tips to help you find customers. Whether you run a managed service provider, a SaaS business, or a consulting practice, you'll love Paul's story. Let's get started. Hi, Paul. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a delight.
I'm excited to talk with you about your journey. You didn't start out as someone in marketing. You started out as being a journalist. So could you share a little bit about that? What inspired you to actually focus on the MSP industry and get into marketing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. So you're right. I started out as a newspaper reporter, and we're talking back when newspapers were just newspapers. So even though the internet did exist, it was like 1993. So it wasn't something that the public knew about. It wasn't really the internet. I don't think the web had even been invented at that point, but I was writing a weekly newspaper as a journalist. It was great fun. I jumped into radio and I did 10 years in radio. It's just like music radio, commercial radio, and it was such good fun until the day it wasn't. And I had what's known as an entrepreneurial seizure. And you'll know this, Raj. It's from the book, The E-Myth Revisited, where once you've got it in your head that you've got to start your own business, that's what you've got to do. So in 2005, I left the media. My first business started out as a PR company doing public relations, because that's what journalists do. They jump to the other side. I was really bad at that, but I discovered that actually I was quite good at just general marketing. And that general marketing business did okay until about 2010, when I discovered the power of niching and having a vertical. And I started working with optometrists, veterinarians, and dentists, and it really took off. And that business did really well. And I sold it in 2016. And that's where we get to the point of how I'm now working with MSPs. I had a 5-year non-compete, which is ridiculous, right? Like the new owner of the business wants to make sure.
Oh my gosh, I can relate to that.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of time.
Yeah.
So I'd spent 5-6 years working up these, being famous in these sectors, and I couldn't work in them. So I looked back to when we'd been a general marketing company and remembered I'd support people as they used to be. And so I sold my business. I was going to take a year out. I didn't. I took 6 weeks and got bored. So I started another business, and that's what's become the MSP Marketing Edge. Where are we? 7 years on today.
That's exciting. And I can relate to so many parts of this story. And I think people listening, if they aspire to eventually sell a company, there is no such thing as retiring on a beach. It's a myth, right?
Yeah.
You get bored pretty fast. You need to keep, the way I see it is the person who can actually build a company to the point that you sell it isn't the kind that can just sit at home and really do nothing. Your mind needs to be active.
Yes. When the emails stop and the calls stop and you're finding yourself driving 3 hours just to have lunch with someone for something to do. You're like, I can't go from being no time business entrepreneur to having too much time. There has to be a happy balance somewhere.
So how did you start finding clients in the IT service space? Because if you're not known in an industry, and I know people who listen to this podcast may be starting their businesses or maybe struggling to grow them faster, but how did you start finding your customers? You serve over 700 MSPs worldwide now. How did you build that?
Yeah, so we, as you say, we've got 700 members of our MSP Marketing Edge, and it must be well over 10,000 other MSPs just listening in my audiences, following my content. Now, it's almost like the second time round, once I'd sold the business, it was easy because I had money. Once you've got money, you can afford to do things properly. So I could build audiences. I was growing my email list, just putting out huge amounts of content. I'm based in the UK, as you can probably tell by my voice. So I was doing lots of events and charging almost nothing just to get people in a room to build a relationship with them. I think what's probably more of interest is what did I do back in 2005? Because even that stuff's valid today. In fact, if you're starting your own business, that stuff's definitely valid. And basically I hustled. As you're reading any book that talks about starting your business, the more effort and energy you throw into the first 2-3 years, the more you get out of it and faster. So I was going to every event where I could possibly, well, first of all, I decided who I wanted to meet. So who were the targets?
Right.
What did the profile look like? And then I asked myself, where are those people? All right, this is 19 years ago. So some of this is a little out of date now, but I would go to events, any event where those target business owners would be. I would get onto what used to be forums, which today would be Facebook groups, LinkedIn itself. If I was starting again tomorrow, if some reason, and I'm not selling this business, I refuse to, I've got at least another 10 years, but if I had to get out of this sector and go in I don't know, start working with chiropodists or something like that. What would I do there? And let's say I had no money. I would do exactly the same things again. I would work LinkedIn. I would work Facebook. I would find out, what do these people do? Which events do they go to? What magazines do they read? What books do they read? What do they belong to? What's their association? What trade shows? All of this. So I think the key thing is, who do you want to reach and where do they hang out?
I love this because you're talking about getting in the mind of your prospect. And I think a lot of times when people market, they look at, here's the features of our service, here's what we can do, and then they try to explain it to somebody. But if you reverse it, like you're talking about, where you're actually thinking about, where do they hang out? What's important to them? What are the pain points that they're dealing with? Your messaging suddenly changes and it resonates so much better with your audience. I think that's one of the keys. You've probably found that as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about making it relevant. And very few people wake up in the morning and think whatever your solution is. They don't think, oh, I need to buy XYZ solution. What they do is they wake up in the morning and they think, I've got this problem, I've got this need, I've got this want. And if and when what you do comes in front of them and they think, oh, that's interesting, I think that could solve my problem or fulfill my need or give me what I want. And within B2B sales, all of those three things, problems, needs, and wants, those are buying triggers. But the more it seems to be about them, the better. This is why I tell my MSPs to, if they can, find themselves a niche or a vertical. And this is the fourth time I've done this. As I said, I work with veterinarians, dentists, optometrists, and now just with MSPs. It's really easy for me to do marketing because I can really understand my market because I can super immerse myself in that market, their problems, their needs, their wants. And secondly, I can make the messages to them really relevant. So for example, if you wanted to sell something to lawyers and you write marketing content for lawyers, you can just slip in a few words, which lawyers know makes you an insider. So you talk about their practice. Lawyers call their business their practice. You could talk about their what do they call it? PMS, practice management software, or case management software, I think they call it. So lawyers have software they buy just to handle all the legal cases and I guess to keep track of all the ambulances that they're chasing. And if you go in and you say to them, the software you use, you're an outsider. Whereas if you go in and you use the acronym, and I'm guessing they call it case management software, CMS. So you say to them, what CMS do you use? Suddenly you're an insider. And actually making your marketing relevant to people is so easy if you understand them and their challenges and their problems and all of that kind of stuff.
So true. It's so true. Now, another thing that you emphasize is systematizing your marketing, your sales, your delivery. And I think a lot of times companies start doing some kind of marketing, but it's either ad hoc, it's not consistent. What can you recommend to create systems that help people grow?
This is a 10-hour conversation that you've just triggered off with that question. So I'll give you the 1 minute answer. Systems are everything. Yeah. I've been running businesses for 19 years. I've had one big success and the one that I sold. This one's successful. I had a few minor failures along the way, things we tried that didn't work. That once you've got something that does work and you establish we've got an audience, they want to buy what we're selling, the price is right, the package is right, the positioning is right, all of that stuff. It then comes down to how can we do this on a regular basis? How can we bring in new people, deliver to those people, satisfy them, and all the thousands of other things we need to do in business without me going mad and without me having to do all of the work? And all of it lies in systems. And the MSPs that I work with are really good at systems for delivery. So they're really good at systems to check their clients' backups, cybersecurity checks, systems for things like someone wants a new user or a password change. There's a system, right? There's a very clear system. And yet they don't use systems for marketing and for actually running their business. And that's almost universal across the whole of the managed services space. So my message is, and this is to any business owner, not just to MSPs, is, hey, if you can put in place a system for your marketing, it just as putting in place a system to run your business removes the stress and removes the ambiguity and keeps the quality high. It's exactly the same with your marketing. So here's a basic weekly marketing system, which any B2B business owner can use. And it's the exact system that I use. It's the exact system that we sell to our clients. And it's based on a small number of things you do once a week. So number one, you create or buy in a blog and you get a video about the same subject. So it doesn't matter what the subject is, but you create some original content for your website, or if you haven't got the time and resource for that, you buy in something like that and you have a video about the same subject and they go on the page together because the video and a blog, which are both different versions of the same message, that's a really powerful combination for a human. Remember, we're trying to attract a bit of Google traffic, but also we're trying to influence humans. So that's the first step. Second step is then you send out an email to your email database telling them about this content. So you're not selling anything, you're educating them about a specific subject. And to see the blog, they have to click the link in the email to go back to your website. So now we're driving some traffic back to the website, but also we can see in our CRM, our email system, who has clicked the link, which is good because that gives us the option to follow those people up at some point. So that's the second step. The third step is you then put some content on social media. So you typically do one piece of new content a day on social media, especially on LinkedIn, which likes one post every 24 hours. Put one of your posts for the week, and you can upload a whole lot. You can schedule them all in one go. So it's a once a week job. But one of your posts, again, drives traffic back to that blog on your website. Now, LinkedIn doesn't like links to external websites, but we just overlook that because bigger picture, we want to get people onto your website. That's the third thing you can do. And there's a number of other things you can pop into that system. You could repurpose the blog into a LinkedIn newsletter. You could create your even more content around that. But just from what I've said there, what I'm talking about there is perhaps no more than 2 hours work a week. And you get better and better at it. And you can get other people to write it for you, to create the video for you, to load it for you. So you as the business owner are doing very little work, but you've got a system. And suddenly now you've got 7 days a week content on week. Every single day you've got content on social media. Every week you're sending out an email, and every week you're adding new content to your website. Even if you did nothing else, you now have better marketing than the vast majority of your competitors.
And a lot of great takeaways here. And I would say if you just did those 3 things that you talked about, you're probably ahead of 90%, maybe even more of your competitors, because that is a very nice system to put in place. And you said something about putting videos inside the blogs. And I just want to drive home the point how important that is from an SEO perspective, because there's research that actually shows the more videos you have on a page, the more inbound links you get. And as a result, Google looks at these signals that, oh, people are thinking you're pretty important because they're linking to you, and it elevates your rankings simply by adding the videos. And to your point, it's not that hard to create. You just come up with a question that people are dealing with, maybe even a support query that you got the prior week. You just stick it on your screen and you answer that query, click record, and that's a simple, fast way to get started. So I love that process. And I take it that you've seen people have a lot of success just starting with these simple, basic tasks.
Yeah, so there's a lot more to it than just those tasks, as you say. That gets you a system going. And thank you, by the way, for that SEO tip. I didn't know that one, so I will take that away and absorb that into my knowledge base in my head. So thank you for that. But no, I think we teach a 3-step system, and what I've just described there sits in the middle. But the 3 steps very quickly. First of all, you build multiple audiences of people to listen to you. So LinkedIn, your LinkedIn connections, your LinkedIn newsletter subscriptions, those are 2 separate audiences in LinkedIn. You'd build up your email database. Those 3 alone, for most businesses, if you just focus on those 3, that's great. Maybe a podcast. This is an audience, the people listening to or watching this podcast. YouTube subscribers, we just hit 1,000 subscribers, which from a pretty much a standing start about 18 months ago, which has been insanely good fun and expensive. But now we've got another sizable audience. And all of these are audiences. So you build multiple audiences. Then you build a relationship with them. And all of that stuff I was talking about, that content system, that's the build the relationship. The third step is you then convert the relationship. And depending what you sell, there are different ways of doing that. So for managed service providers, it's very much about picking up the phone, talking to people, finding out when are they out of contract, how happy are they with their current MSP, because actually managed services is a very complicated, very slow sale. Someone will switch once every 7 to 10 years. But the good news is once they do switch, they'll stay with you forever if you keep getting it right. So it's a very slow sale, but very, very good retention. Whereas something like SaaS, for example, SaaS software, you're not going to phone people. I guess you would at an enterprise level, but for your $30, $40, $50 a user per month, you're not going to phone anyone, but you'd have all sorts of different tripwires. You'd have scheduled offers. You'd have I guess it's all about getting people into demos, all of that kind of thing. But that basic system of building up people to listen to you and then educating them and then finding out what the buying signals are, what are the triggers, and then just going after those triggers. And that's a great system.
Thank you for that. I know a lot of companies have a contact form on their website. And when people reach out, there's actually a time element that is critical here. SalesLoft did a study where if you respond within the first 5 minutes of receiving the query, the chances of you making a connection with that prospect is, I think, 20 times, not 20%, but like 20 times higher than if you waited an hour definitely if you waited a day. So I know people will sometimes say, oh yeah, we got this query yesterday or we got it Friday. Let's respond over the weekend. I don't know about you, but I can't even remember what I was asking somebody for on a Friday morning when
Yeah.
it comes to time on Monday. And so the speed to respond is so important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it makes sense if you think of the way we work. We're all busy people. And 2 hours ago, before I came to record this with you, I sat down and I had a very specific project I wanted to get started this week. So I did what I call a frenzy, where I shut everything down. And for 2 hours, I was just focused on that thing. And I'm looking up solutions and possible suppliers and just Googling the heck out of it. And obviously, I've sent off 15 emails to different companies. I've submitted 3 or 4, boxes that you fill in, inquiry forms. I've booked a couple of appointments on Calendly. And to me, the ones that feel I'm most likely to buy with them are where I've booked some time in their live calendar. So I've got some questions about their solution. I know I can speak to a salesperson. I've got one in an hour and a half's time. I've got one tomorrow. Who's most likely to win that? It's the guy that I can speak to in an hour and a half's time, isn't it? So I completely agree. In fact, one of the ways to be faster than your competitors these days is to put live chat on your website. But don't do it yourself. You don't want to be waking up at 2 a.m. because your phone has gone off and it's someone live chatting you. It's you do it during the day when you're at work, and then there are hundreds of companies out there that will do your live chat for you 24 hours a day while you're asleep. And you just give them the information there's probably 80% of the live chats are about 20. It's the 80-20 thing, isn't it? 80% of the live chats are about the same 20% of the subject. So you just give them a script and you get them to, you say, our next step is you book them a 15-minute appointment in our calendar, or whatever the next step is. There's plenty of companies out there that can do that. And for a couple of $100 a month, why wouldn't you do that, right? If it gives you a speed advantage over your competitors.
Absolutely. So let me go a little bit deeper into the systems, and that is, how do you measure the systems? So let's talk about KPIs that you measure, that you recommend people measure, and also the OKRs, the objectives and key results, if that's something that you add as a component for people to take a look at. Can you comment on some of the KPIs that you find are pretty critical to make sure people are growing on the path that they want to be on?
Yeah, sure. So I don't talk a lot about KPIs, key performance indicators, with my members, because we tend to deal with people at the very beginning of their marketing journey, and they're quite overwhelmed as it is. They start Googling, what thing should I do? And there's like a billion options. And then someone says ChatGPT, and then someone says SEO, and then someone says pay-per-click and all of this. So we actually spend the vast majority of our time simplifying it down into just follow the system. We give you everything you need, just do that. But of course, we do talk about KPIs as our members grow and their businesses grow, KPIs become important. We tend to talk more about KPIs for phone people, when you've got people doing outbound calls, because those are the hardest people to manage. But if I think about my own KPIs, and we've gone from measuring 40 or 50 stats that I never look at, so we've drilled it down now to, I think we have about 6 figures that we track every month. So I've got about 12 people on my team. We're fully remote, fully flexible. I only hire like adults with families, and tends to be people that have a bit longer in the tooth. And that's worked out, that recruitment policy has worked out quite well for me. And one of the few jobs that I still do in the business that I will not let anyone else do is the KPIs. Because I see it that my job as the leader is to be all over the information at least once a week, so I know which direction we're going. So for example, and this is painful, this is the most painful job of the week for me, but it's the most necessary. I noticed about 7 weeks ago that our email list is getting smaller rather than bigger. So all of our audiences are going up in size, and we have a lot of audiences, but our email is going down. And we put in place something 2 years ago that if people don't open an email, eventually we unsubscribe them automatically, because that's best email practice. So your open rate and your click-through rate stay really high. The downside of that is if you're not plowing new people into your email database, your size goes down. So it's only because I literally go in and look at the figure every single week in our CRM, in our email system, and because I've been tracking it for a number of months, that I notice, it's gone down again. Hang on, we're likely to breach what I would consider a minimum figure for a viable email database for a business of our size. Now, if someone else was doing that report, I would just glance at the figure, wouldn't I, in 3 seconds, and then move on to something else. So to give you an idea, that's one of the jobs I will never, ever give up within the business, because I spotted that problem. I've spotted it faster than I would have done if someone else was compiling that report. And obviously now I can shift that's that project I was talking about earlier. We can shift direction, change some things, reallocate some resources to fix what's important. So I think my takeaway from that would be find 5 or 6 KPIs and focus intently on those. when you find yourselves, and MSPs are far too guilty of this in particular, they'll put together dashboards with 50, 60 stats, and it's actually, you don't need them. The most important stats are monthly recurring revenue or subscription revenue, profit, how much money are you actually making in real time? And your accountant should be able to tell you this more or less in real time, if not last month, which is still dated information. And then depending on what it is you sell and how you sell it, there'll be some other stats in there, but you want to focus on the things that move the needle. If I've got, what have I got? I've got 8,500 LinkedIn connections, right? That doesn't move the needle anymore. So me adding another 10 connections on LinkedIn has almost no effect. So I've stopped tracking that as a stat, just to give you an example. Whereas I still track our monthly recurring revenue. I still track the email because that's one that's in crisis, et cetera, et cetera.
I think these are such important golden nuggets here. And I want to drive home the point of one of the things that you said as a theme is there are certain things that only you can do. And as a CEO, you got to wake up every morning and say, what is the best use of my time today? And if you're spending your time doing things that you could probably outsource just as easily, if you got the money to do it, then that's what you should be doing, because that takes away from the time that you have to do these critical things that are actually going to grow your business, working on your business, as opposed to in your business, as they say. So thank you for driving home that point too. There's a few other things that I wanted to touch on, and that is, how do you overcome some of the obstacles? So you mentioned one of the things that you saw was your KPI of the email list was going down. Your business has been around for a long time. You're a seasoned entrepreneur. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you face? And the reason I ask this is I think sometimes other businesses see the really beautiful, shiny things that are out there, and they see the successes. I myself have built and sold 3 companies, and boy, I've had stepped in a lot of potholes. And so can you share some of the big obstacles that you've had, and how have you overcome those?
Again, that's a 10-hour conversation, isn't it? It's such a massive subject. I think if I look back over the last 20 years, and I do sometimes, especially when you get to reflection points, like in February, I think it's the 27th of February is the date that I quit my job and started my first business in 2005. So that is always a date of reflection for me. Where am I going? Am I going the right way? What would I have done differently last year, etc.? I think the big things are, I wish earlier on that I had done more, tried more new things, failed more. I wish I'd worried less. I remember a week where I was worrying about, this is when in a different business, where we had small number of clients paying lots of money. And so you lose one of those clients, and that has quite an impact. And I didn't sleep on the Monday night because I thought a client was going to leave. I didn't sleep on the Tuesday night because they didn't leave, but then they made some comment, and I'm then worrying about, are they looking for another supplier? And then the Wednesday night, I was worrying about cash flow. Thursday night, I was worrying about the key member of staff leaving when I had 2 staff. And I got to the end of the week, and I was a nervous wreck. And I think that the head stuff, the mind stuff, the emotional trauma of being a business owner is possibly the worst thing. And that's the thing that you have to overcome. And how do you overcome something like that? You listen to podcasts like this, you read great books. I have a great book suggestion in a second based on what you were just talking about. But also I think you have to give yourself a reality check of, what are we doing here? And I think the business owners who are most successful are not trying to build a business for the sake of it, and they're not just doing it to make money. So we make tons of money. We make more than enough money. We make good profit. But to me, that's a side effect of doing a really good job. And I know lots of people say that and they don't mean it, but I genuinely do mean it. I have other revenue streams. I took the money we made from the last business and that went into property and investments and whatsoever. So sure, I love the money I get out of this business, but number one is we do a good job, and we do a great quality job. And we have a mission, which is about we're helping around about 700 MSPs right now. I want that to be 1,000, then 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, because we're seeing people have better lives. I've always said, if you can improve your marketing, you can grow your business. If you can grow your business, you can make more cash. You can then use that cash to buy other people's time to do the things that you don't want to do, so you can spend more time with your family. I work 30 hours a week, and that 30 hours a week is by choice. It could be 20 hours. It could probably be 10 if I really wanted it to be. But 30 hours for me is just enough to satiate me in a week and give me things to do. But it also means I'm a sole parent. My daughter only has me as a parent, and I go to every school event. We hang out together. We go to the theatre a lot. I'm always there for her, and work never gets in the way. In fact, half an hour after recording this, we're going to drive to London here in the UK, and we're going to a music gig tonight. which is great. And if I worked for someone else, I couldn't do that. So for me, the number one thing is that the business fits around my life. A, fits around my life and allows me to do the things I want to do. But B, also, it's being driven by a mission. And every conversation I have with my team is about how is this going to help the people we're working with? How's it going to make it simpler? How's this going to make the quality higher? And that means we perhaps don't make as much profit as we could, but the quality is absolutely there. So I don't know if I've really answered your question there, but because it's a very big question, but there's some things to throw in the mix there.
You said something that just warmed my heart, and that is making sure that you've got a balance of your work and your life. And it's so nice to hear that you spend that much time to make sure that you don't miss your daughter's school events and so on. I was the same way. I remember every Thursday afternoon at 3:00, I would leave my office. I would change into my athletic gear and I would go drive to my kid's school. And I was their soccer coach, football coach in the UK,
Cool.
soccer coach. And I love that. I did it for 6 years. And I got to tell you, I have such a strong relationship with my kids who are now both adults. We're empty nesters and our kids call and they visit and it's really nice. And I think it's so important that as you're building your business, that you don't lose sight of those probably even more important things, which is that the relationships with the people that you love the most. I think it's such a key takeaway from the point you just made. So thanks for sharing that. I think it's important to know.
And could I throw in that book recommendation that I mentioned as well? And it actually wraps up everything we've just been talking about the last few minutes. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X, written by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And I bought it like 3 years ago and only started reading it this year. And oh my goodness, it's one of those. I have a special shelf, a bookshelf in my bedroom, which is for the books that have impacted me the most. And this has earned its place in the first quarter of the book. It's exactly this. It's about to make the big jumps, you have to remove all the things that you don't need to do. And I've just read a great case study about James Clear, who is the author of Atomic Habits, which is the best-selling nonfiction book in history. And I'm sure, again, it's a book that's also a recommended book. And it tells the 3-year story of how he had to remove himself from the day-to-day of his business to spend a torturous 3 years writing this book, which was worth doing because it's, as I say, it's sold 10 million copies. And it's full of little case studies like that. And it's inspired me to lose even more off my plate. I think you said it earlier that you should only do what only you can do. Well, guess what? When you remove all the rest of it, you get more time with your family. You actually spend more quality time thinking about your business because you're not trapped in the business doing little tasks. And it tends to grow faster and be more profitable. And it's really hard to do that when it's just you and 2 other people in the business. But once you do get to a level where you realize that you're the one holding the business back and your staff are itching for more of your workload, and you have to be brave at that point. I think it's a crossroads, isn't it? And at that point, you have to slowly push all of your work out to your team, go on more vacations, spend more time with your family, and then 2 years later, the business is twice the size. And it happened because you had a plan, but you had the resource and the time and the space to follow that plan.
I second the recommendation for the book. It's one of the best I've ever read. And they have another book called Who Not How, which is also a really good read. It goes a little bit deeper into the specifics of when you need to get something done. The first question you should ask is not how, but who can do it for me? And that suddenly, that perspective changes everything because you get so much done faster. You're leveraging other people's time. To your point, you're buying other people's time, which makes you buy your time back, basically. So great. Love that book recommendation. And with that, we're actually going to pivot to a rapid fire round of questions. These are 1-line, 2-line questions, maybe a paragraph, but really quick questions here. So Paul, you ready for the rapid fire round of questions?
I'm ready. I'll try and do 1 line.
Okay. All right. What's the last book you read? Maybe we just answered it, but what's the last book you read? Okay.
10X.
All right.
Yeah, great book.
10X is easier than 2X. Wonderful. What would you recommend to a 25-year-old getting ready to start their business and is a little bit nervous?
Just do it. If you can jump in and have no way of going back to a safe employed life, you will put 1,000% more time and attention on it. And that is the answer to building up a successful first business.
Let's advance this in years. And let's say you're a 45-year-old person. What is your recommendation for positioning your business so that you can actually retire when you want to retire?
That's a really good question. I think when we were talking about systems, you've sold businesses, I've sold one business, and no buyer wants to buy a business that's in disarray, that needs the owner there. I demonstrated to the guy that bought my last business that I only came in for 2 hours on a Thursday, and I was working about 20 hours a week. And so the business ran perfectly well without me. So I think the more you systemize the business, do you know what it is? You need the business to bore you. I think at the point you're bored with your business, you can tick a big box that everything's going well. Because if there are no fires to fight, there are no crises, you're not firing people left and center, that's actually a good place to be, right? You want your business to be boring. So I would say make it boring. That can be my answer.
That's a wonderful answer. I jokingly say to people, you have a business when you can go on vacation and you come back and you still have a business. It's an important factor here. What do you think the most important quality is in a business leader?
I think trust and transparency. I do this with my members, I do this with my clients, I do it with my child. And I think the more transparent you are, the faster you build trust, and that buys you more space and time. If you're transparent about small things that go wrong, the day that a big thing goes wrong, you've already bought yourself a huge amount of trust. I think that's the best way to do it.
What is your favorite way to unwind at the end of the day?
I love running. I did love running until I damaged my knee and needed surgery, and I'm currently struggling to get back to running. But exercise is so important. It's another thing that as business owners we forget. But if it's not exercise, it's hanging out with my kid or my girlfriend, or I love sci-fi, and in particular Star Trek, Doctor Who. I don't know if you've ever heard of Doctor Who. It's a British sci-fi show. It's on Disney Plus now across the world, and we're right in the middle of a season, and it's just so exciting. I do love Doctor Who.
Oh, that's wonderful. Final question is, what is the one word that describes your business philosophy?
Excitement.
Excitement. I love it. And with that, we have Paul Green. Thank you for joining me, Paul. You gave so many golden nuggets of insights. I'm really looking forward to sharing this podcast with the rest of the world, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks again for joining us.